Hi, welcome to U.S. History 1301. This is U.S. History up to 1877. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez, and I will be your instructor for this class this semester. Now, what we're going to be doing in this video presentation is to go over the syllabus. Consider this as the first day of class. This is if you were to be taking a face-to-face class in campus. This is the day when you meet the instructor, and the instructor explains what the course is going to be about, talks about the textbook and the assignments, the exams, how to prepare for the exams and the like. So it's more about the technical and the mechanics, if you will, of the course. We're not really getting into the lectures, but it is a very, very important presentation that provides orientation and guidance for knowing how to, number one, how to navigate the Blackboard page. In other words, where to identify the major links for this course in terms of the instruction, where the lectures are located, the assignments, where to submit them, and the like. But also, number two, it also provides very good guidance for preparing students for not only passing the exams, but also excelling in the exams and in the course at large. Okay, so I highly recommend that you go over this material as thoroughly as possible, and I'm very, very convinced you're going to find it very useful, to the point that a great many of the questions that students have across the semester can be answered by just going back to the syllabus. Of course, you can always contact me for clarification, for explanation, and so on, and I will be providing that guidance. But here I'm trying to clear all of the questions, doubts, and concerns that usually come up across the semester, and so I'm trying to pretty much clear the path, clear the way for you to have a very clear vision for how to actually navigate the course and actually be able to pass it and excel in it. All right, so let us go to our Blackboard page, and Blackboard is going to be the platform that we're going to be using for this course. And by the way, this is an 8-week course, as I will explain. And so if you're taking History 1301 Section 105 or 116, is the same course. It's just different sections, but it's identical. They're just different sections of the same course. So it applies to either one of them. So I'm just going to open up here Section 105, but 116 also applies, of course. Okay, so if you open up the course, this is what you're going to see. As you open up the course, again, the assignment, well, not the assignments, but the announcements, I'm sorry, the announcement page. I've posted one announcement. I did this Sunday night, so I sent this announcement indicating that I'm about to upload this video presentation on Tuesday morning. Is going to be there, and I'm going to send the email announcement. I'm going to post another announcement indicating that the video is already to view. I'm going to provide instructions where to go and find it, the link, etc. And this is what we're going to be doing the very first day, if you will, of the semester, which is January the 16th, okay, on Tuesday. Now, on the left, you will see a column of links, and those are really the main links for this course. And on the very top, there's a link titled Syllabus. If you click on that link, it will take you to the syllabus page. So I created a page, it's called the syllabus page, and also I've provided the file of the syllabus there. It's a Word doc, so if you want to save it on your computer, download it, and so on, it is there again for you to access it. So let's go over the syllabus, and the syllabus is going to describe everything that you need to know about this course. It's a very, very important document. So let us go over that. Let's start from the top. So, okay, so this is U.S. History 1301. Whether you're taking section 105 or 116 is really the same course. It is a 8-week session. Okay, so it's a short semester that only spans for about 8 weeks. So you're gonna have to really cover more ground, more material in half the time of a regular semester. So again, it can be done, by the way. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I will be your instructor for this class this semester. The fastest and easiest way to reach me is via email. My email is listed there, alfonso.lopez@austincc.edu. I'm checking my email every day, several times a day. So my policy is that if you send me an email from Monday through Friday, I will be responding within a 24-hour period. Okay, Monday through Friday, 24-hour period. In the weekends, however, I might or might not respond within a 24-hour period, just because sometimes I leave town, due to personal or academic matters. And during the weekend, my policy is that I respond within a 48-hour period. So if you send it, let's say, Sunday, or you send it on, let us just say Saturday, an email, I will be responding by Monday morning. Okay, so Monday morning for sure you will receive a response if you send it during the weekend. Now, that's as far as my policy, but ACC policy, on the other hand, states very clearly that all electronic communication between faculty and students must be conducted through the official college supply systems, which means that you have to use your ACC email account to send me messages regarding class and assignments, grades, and so on. Because if you send the email from a private account, I'm not going to respond to that email. So again, that is policy of the college. So please keep that in mind. If you're in a rush, if you really are, you have an emergency going on and you want a quick response from the instructor, please use your ACC email account. Okay. All right. So in terms of textbooks, there's going to be one required for this course, and it's not really a standard textbook per se. This is not the standard textbook that you get in other courses where you open up the book and you start reading about U.S. history or any other history for that matter from cover to cover. But rather, this is a booklet. It's a thin booklet, as you can see, and it's called Reading American Horizons, Primary Sources for U.S. History in a Global Context. And it's really a collection of historical documents. That's what it is. Documents that were written, stated, produced by important historical figures of U.S. history. So you're going to hear their ideas, their voice directly, without filter. In other words, it's just you're reading directly the statements of people that made history. This is the 4th edition. Please make sure you're getting the 4th edition and not any other edition, because the reason why you're going to need this book is to complete the course assignment that is due at the end of the semester on April 25th. This is the main reason why you're going to need this book. Why do I need it? Well, because there's an assignment that is due, and this is where you're going to, derive the information from. If you buy any other editions, like the 3rd or 2nd edition, the documents vary, so you're not going to have the same documents listed there. So it's extremely important that you're getting the 4th edition. Where to buy it? As far as I know, this book is carried by the ACC bookstore at Highland campus. So the Highland campus actually carries this book, and it's sold for $20, no more than 30. You might buy it used for 20 or 15 there, or new for $30. And so that's the only financial investment you're going to be making, in this course. Now, I will explain in just a few moments why I don't use a standard textbook for this course. Once we get into the mode of learning, I will reserve that for that section. Okay. All right. So this is an online asynchronous course, which means that it's delivered fully online, but there will be no designated class meeting time for real-time instruction. So this is a very, very flexible format where the students have all the freedom to tailor their own schedule and go over the material in their own rhythm and pace. Now, of course, this is an 8-week course, which suggests that despite the fact that you can tailor your own schedule, you do still need to be covering a lot of ground every week, because you're doing twice the work of a student taking this class in a regular semester, in a 16-week course. So yes, you do have a lot of freedom in that regard, but also you do have a certain quota to meet, in other words, okay, in terms of what lectures you need to be covering each week. Okay. All right. So in terms of the course description, what this course is going to be about. Again, so this is the first half of U.S. history, which covers U.S. history from the very, very early origins, going back to the ancient world, prehistoric times, as a matter of fact, all the way to 1877, which was really the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction. That era called the Civil War and Reconstruction era, and that kind of closed in 1877. So what we're going to be covering, therefore, is looking at, number one, the very foundational stages of U.S. history, going back to, once again, the prehistoric world and also the ancient world, which means that we're going to be looking at the, number one, the Native Americans, the origins of the Native American society that inhabited the continent, their stages of development, how they develop over time, their cultures and societies, and also their religious worldviews. And eventually, at some point, they're going to develop highly advanced civilizations. So there were very highly advanced civilizations in the American continent prior to the arrival of the Europeans. And we're going to learn about that, first and foremost. Then we look at the European world. That will be the second theme or topic of the semester, by looking at Europe, looking at also the foundation of Europe, because Europe is also going to be foundational, critical in the shaping of the United States. So we have to take a glance at European history by looking at the ancient Greeks and the Romans, which were the forerunners of Europe. We're going to look at the Middle Ages, and eventually the age of discovery. Okay, this is the age that started around the 12 and 1300s in Europe, whereby the Europeans are beginning to move out of the continent of Europe, and they're beginning to explore new territories outside of Europe for the purpose of developing trading networks and relationships with other societies, whether those societies were in the Middle East or in Asia, like in India or China. So again, it's a very slow process, of course, a very gradual and very slow process of change. The development of long-distance trade or international trade. And that was critical, the development of long-distance trade, for really all of the changes that occurred ever since, not only in Europe, but around the world. For example, the age of exploration, Europeans are exploring bodies of water. They're exploring the continent of Africa, for example, at least the west coast of Africa in the Atlantic Ocean. And one of the main motivations behind that age of exploration had to do with trade. They're trying to develop trading systems, or they're building better navigation systems, wind-powered vessels. In order to accelerate the pace of trade, they want to tap into the spices and the silks of Asia. And so they want to circumnavigate Africa. They want to go around Africa, develop really a route, if you will, to the Far East. And in that age of exploration, they're going to stumble upon a new continent. Of course, in 1492, Christopher Columbus was trying to reach Asia by moving westward, and he stumbled upon the American continent. So we see the discovery of America. Okay, so that's a major development in world history, which was really propelled by international trade. So again, trade will be the engine of change in the world as it's transforming technologies like navigation systems that are being used to explore the world by Europeans, but also by other groups as well outside of Europe, and that led to major discoveries like the discovery of America. So as now Europeans discover America in 1492, they're initiating a whole new era as well in global history called the Age of Encounters, because the civilizations and the cultures of the world are encountering one another. Civilizations that were separated by bodies of water, that were separated in space and time by long distances and so on, they're now coming closer and closer into contact with one another. The Europeans are discovering the Native Americans are discovering the Europeans moving to West Africa, they're moving into that world as well, and they're also the Europeans moving into places like India in the early 1500s, and also Southeast Asia, places like China, for example, the Spice Islands and so on. So we see the encounters of the world's populations. We're going to explore that also in this class very closely, that era. But beyond that, in the Western Hemisphere, which is the American continent, what we're going to look at is that the Europeans that are moving into the New World, as they call the American continent, the New World, starting with the Spaniards, for example, that are the first comers, the pioneers of exploration of the New World, we're going to see major clashes, with some of the largest political entities or empires that existed in the continent, like the Aztec Empire of Central Mexico and the Inca Empire of South America. So we're also going to look at the Spanish conquest of the Aztecs and the Incas in this class. Again, the major clashes between those two worlds, and in the early 1500s. And after that, we look at early colonization. This is the first stages, looking at the 15 and early 1600s, whereby Europeans are beginning to move in great numbers into the New World in order to set up trading outposts and eventually establishing a series of colonies, of colonial outposts in the New World, motivated by trade, of course, the extraction of natural resources from the New World in order to trade it around the world for gold. Again, that was the idea. So economics or trade was extremely important for the discovery of America, but also for the colonization of America. But also another factor that we're going to be looking at very closely in this class is religion. That what was really pushing Europeans out of Europe to move into the New World was, besides economics, was religion. There was a religious upheaval in Europe. That was really a religious, conflict between Catholics and Protestants over matters of doctrine and so on. And that led to persecution. Both groups were persecuted, by the way. And that led to a great number of religious communities to flee Europe, to come to the New World and establish their religious societies. And we're going to see the formation of 5 religious societies or religious colonies by Great Britain. Okay, we're going to see the formation of those colonies very, very closely initially in the very first part of the semester, early colonization. Now, the second part of the semester, we'll look at the colonial period itself. Okay, so the colonial period will span from, let us just say, 1640 all the way to the end of the colonial period in 1783, when the 13 colonies gained their independence from Great Britain. Now, in the colonial period, we're going to examine also certain themes or topics that are critical for understanding the not only formation but also the development of colonial society and culture. For example, we're going to look at the slave trade. Okay, the slave trade was instrumental in shaping the colonies, because what we're going to be looking at is that the southern colonies of the original 13 colonies established by Great Britain were plantation colonies. Those were actually colonies that were growing things like cotton, for example, tobacco, rice, and they were exporting those products to England. And the system of labor that Great Britain introduced in those southern colonies was slavery. Again, so we're going to look at the slave trade, the African slave trade. We're going to start by looking at Africa, how slavery, was conducted in Africa, and then the reasons why the African kingdoms started exporting slaves into the outside. Eventually, the Portuguese and other European groups will be exporting massive numbers of African slaves into their own colonies in the New World to grow things like, once again, cotton, sugar, tobacco, rice, coffee, and other products. But here in North America, it was primarily tobacco, cotton, and rice. Okay, so we're going to look very, very closely at that. Again, that development of this, the slave trade, the African slave trade. We're also going to look at areas of colonial society that were changing dramatically. Again, so we're going to analyze change as well. For example, religion will be analyzed very closely. The religious colonies that I just mentioned a moment ago, like, for example, New England, places like Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, and the like, again, were religious colonies. They were actually settled by religious communities fleeing from England. But at some point, those colonies started changing. The generations that were born after the founding of those colonies were not as committed to the religious beliefs and practices of their forefathers. So we see a sharp decline in religious fervor, religious interest, and the colonies were becoming more and more secular, more materialistic, in other words, in their orientation. And we're going to see the reasons why religions was losing ground and force, and how also people were reacting to those changes in those colonies. The elders, the conservative, groups that feared the change. We're going to see how they attempted to halt that tendency by unleashing a series of persecutions, otherwise known as witch hunts. We're going to look at the Salem witch hunts, or the witch trials of 1692 in Massachusetts, which was really a reaction against the change taking place the liberalism or the modernity, if you will, that was taking place in that colony. We're going to see also, of course, the attempts to bring back religion through other more proactive, more positive means. There were those that believed that instead of persecuting people and labeling them as witches, that it will be more convenient to inspire them to lead a revival. So we're going to see this massive revivalist movement in the 1730s and 40s, otherwise known as the First Great Awakening, which was really an attempt to bring back religion into the minds and hearts of the colonists. The First Great Awakening, was extremely important, not only in reviving religion among the colonists, but also in trying to convert as many Native Americans to Christianity. So we're going to see a great effort by the colonists to spread Christianity among the natives. We're also going to see that as well. We're going to see also change taking place within the Native American societies because they're becoming more and more in contact with the European world. Christianity is trying to convert them. Some of them convert, some others don't. But a great many Europeans are adopting the values and traditions of the Europeans, and we're going to see how Native American societies were changing as well. So this was set off by the First Great Awakening. The other change that the First Great Awakening brought about was the massive conversion of the African slaves to Christianity as well. There will be a great effort to convert the African slaves in the southern colonies, and this led to Baptist and Methodist, mostly Baptist missionaries, to move into the southern colonies and the plantations and convert massive numbers of African slaves. And so we see this is the time when the African slaves converted to Christianity. So we're going to see that as well very closely. We're also going to examine relationships between the natives and the settlers, how they affected each other, and eventually how this led to a series of alliances and rivalries between different Native American tribal groups with the European powers, whether those was Great Britain and France, eventually leading to the French and Indian War. Okay, almost towards the end of the colonial period, the French and Indian War. We're going to examine that very closely as well. At the end of the colonial period, we're going to look at the American Revolution, the origins of the American Revolution, looking at the economic factors, but also philosophical factors, the development of the war, and the outcome. Okay, so that will cover part two. We close with the American independence movement. Part three, we'll look at early nationhood from the formation of the United States as an independent nation all the way to the Civil War and Reconstruction period. So in that 80-year plus period, we're going to look at the founding of the United States, the attempt by the 13 original states of the Union to create a country, the constitutions that they wrote in order to create the nation. Eventually they created a republic in 1787. And the struggles of the republic to maintain its sovereignty, its integrity, its unity. We're going to see the challenges of the American Republic when the American Republic was challenged by disunity, by political parties, and foreign conflicts, particularly the conflicts in Europe that affected American trade, conflicts between France and England, which led to another conflict between England and the United States, otherwise known as the War of 1812. We're also going to look at two major events that shaped and transformed the United States in the early 19th century, and that is the Industrial Revolution on one hand. This is the industrialization of the Northeast part of the country, factories, railroads, canals, for example, wage labor, what is called capitalism. We can see the emergence of a capitalist system in the north part of the country. that transformed people's lives dramatically, because people are moving away from the countryside, they're moving into the cities. This is when Americans are moving into cities to take on jobs and factories and so on. And they're getting paid wages. So there's a new system of labor in the United States. But the South is not going to industrialize, so we see the division of the country very clearly because of the Industrial Revolution. We see that the southern region of the country decided not to industrialize, not to build any factories, but rather stay in this path of agriculture and plantation systems, growing things like cotton and tobacco and rice. And they're now moving into a cotton-based economy because the Industrial Revolution needed cotton to manufacture textiles and clothing. That was what the Industrial Revolution was all about. So the South is going to expand the plantation system, and they're going to also expand its slave labor system. The slave labor system will be also massively expanded across the South, and what we see is a country divided between two different regional economic systems. In the North, we have industrial capitalism, and in the South, we have this plantation economy with slave labor. So once again, in the North, we have industries, we have a system of wage labor. And in the South, we have plantations and we have slave labor. And eventually, those systems are incompatible. They're becoming more and more engaged in this rivalry and competition to see which system was going to be dominant in the country. And eventually, this produced a rupture in the Union in 1860. This is going to be the other event we're going to look at, and that is the Civil War between the North and the South, between the industrial North and the agricultural South. And we're going to look at that very closely from 1860 to 65, looking at the ultimate defeat of the South, the ending of slavery, and after 1865, the reconstruction of the country that ended in 1877 again. So this is what we're going to be covering in a nutshell across the semester. Those are the major themes and topics that we're going to be dealing with. Now, you'll notice that as you are going through the lectures, because again, this is going to be, as I will explain in just a few seconds, this is going to be the main mode of learning or method of instruction. Again, that you're going to be watching video lectures. You'll notice that my lectures, my approach, my perspective is one that takes into account what is called the global perspective. Meaning that although I'm teaching about U.S. history, I'm also trying to see connections. What events from the outside are influencing events here in North America. Okay, it's almost like looking at a puzzle, and instead of just focusing on one piece of the puzzle and isolate that from the rest, you're trying to see that piece of the puzzle in a larger picture, to see how that piece fits into the larger whole. In other words, that's what is called the global perspective. So although I'm looking at here events taking place in the United States, I'm at the same time trying to expand the vision to see what was really taking place in the outside. Not just for the sake of doing that, but rather finding links and connections and influences. What was really influencing and impacting the United States from the outside, in other words, okay? Because no country develops in splendid isolation from the rest of the world. There's no culture, there's no society, there's no country that evolves independently and totally disconnected from the outside. We are part of a whole, and we need to look at how we're affecting each other. So we might be looking at, for example, the development of the United States, but also looking at Native American groups that are surrounding, the 13 colonies, for example, or looking at the Spanish Empire to the south, or looking at, for example, Europe, the influences of Europe, or Africa. We just mentioned the African slave trade. And obviously, the African slaves were bringing their own cultures into the colonies. So we're going to be looking at not only Native American civilizations and their cultures, but also we're going to be looking at African cultures. We will be looking also at European culture and civilization. And it's almost as if you're taking a world civilizations course simultaneously as you're taking U.S. history. Again, that's the kind of global perspective I'm referring at. And the other perspective is that I also tend to look at the inner world of human beings. I'm trying to look at the world through their eyes. I'm trying to get into their psyche, through their head, in other words. So for me, it's important not just to pay attention to what people are doing in the outside, for example, in the political world, in the economy. That's important. But I'm also trying to understand people's mindsets as well. Okay? Trying to psychoanalyze them, for example. Trying to get into their belief systems. So one way to look into people's minds and understand their interior, how they actually see reality, how they perceive the world around them, is by looking at things like religion, for example. Okay? If you study religion, you're really moving into the inner world of people. What people believe to be real, what is unreal, what is the afterlife, is there's any afterlife, what are the major forces or gods or beings or spirits or entities that created the world and control the world, and so on. What kind of rituals and ceremonies people perform, why they perform it, how, and so on. All of that is extremely important. And it's not just important because it's exotic, but when we're looking at this period of time in history, let us just say the 1300s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, even into the 1800s, religion was critical. It was central to people's lives. It was the way people look at the world. Okay, their religion was everything. How people were indoctrinated, the kind of ideas that were instilled upon them by their elders, really shaped the way they conceived reality in the universe. Okay, whether they were living in a dangerous universe or good creation or bad creation and so on, whether they feared God or they loved, etc., God and so on, or they believed in sin or did not, or guilt. All of those issues are extremely important to look at. So I pay attention to that, and in order to do that, I use methods and theories from other fields outside of history, such as religious studies. I use philosophy. I use cultural studies, anthropology, for example. Those are the kind of fields, and of course, in the field of psychology as well. Those are the kind of fields that I take into account in order to use them and study the people of the past. Okay, so you'll notice almost right away that as you're moving along the lectures, that I'm trying to get at the interior, the inner world of human beings, the people that we're studying in history. Okay, so this is just, again, something that I wanted to share with you. That way, once you get into the lectures, you'll have a very good grasp, that what you're, learning is not just memorizing dates and names, again, of people and memorizing laws and so on, which is important, but we're trying to understand people's behavior. Why people behave in the way they did, what motivated them, to embark upon certain actions and so on. Okay, that's how people make history, by the way. We make history by the things that we're thinking, the things that we're sensing, the things that we're, that is inspiring us, motivating us, and so on. From the inside, the things that we feel, our emotions, those are forces that cannot be seen from the outside, but those are forces that push people forward, in life. Okay, so keep that in mind as we move along. All right. Now, how are you going to be learning this material? Everything that I just described in the past 20, 25 minutes, how are you going to be learning all this? Well, as I mentioned a few moments ago, is that the mode of learning is that you're going to be learning all this material through a series of video lectures. They're recorded. They're already posted on Blackboard under instructional materials. So let me just show you. The section here is under course content. There's a link titled instructional materials. You click on that and you're going to see two folders. One folder contains the lectures and the other the outlines of the lectures, the outlines that you see on the screen. So you click on the upper folder and you're going to find 9 topics, 9 folders, and those are the 9 themes that we're going to be covering across the semester. And each folder has 3 lectures. Okay, and they span for about an hour and 20 minutes. Hour and 20 minutes each, which is similar, if not identical, to the lectures that I provide in person, in an in-person format, in campus. Okay, classes span for an hour and 20 minutes. You attend 2 meetings per week. You take notes and so on, and that's in a regular semester. Now, this is an 8-week course, which means that you might want to or need to actually cover more than 2 lectures per week. I mean, that might actually entail watching 3 lectures per week again. So the idea is for you to watch those lectures in that order. You first watch the lectures of the first topic, and then you move into the second topic, the second folder on the European background, and then third with the religious colonies and so on, fourth African slavery and so on and so forth, again in that order. Okay, so that is your main responsibility. The lectures, once again, are identical to the kind of lectures I provide in person. So I'm giving you a virtual experience of a face-to-face class where you're seeing the instructor, you're listening to them, you're watching the outline. Those are outlines that I present on the projector in class and so on. And your responsibility is to watch them and take notes, because all of the material presented in the lectures will be covered in the exams exclusively. In other words, the exams will be based exclusively 100% on the lectures and nothing else. So you don't really need to be following up on readings, on articles, on outside sources of any kind. So the key to pass this class is just focus on the lectures. Okay, focus on the lectures, and that is really all the instruction that you will be receiving for this class. Okay, there will be 9 topics, meaning that the lectures are organized thematically or around themes. There are 9 themes, and every time we cover 3 topics or themes, we have an exam over that material. Okay, so there will be 3 exams, as you can see here. Now, having said that, let us talk about the exams. And the exams will not be the kind of standard conventional exams where, students are taking an exam on a specific day and time, and, they're limited to a certain time frame and so on. They are more like writing assignments, okay, that you're going to have about, this is an 8-week course. So we're talking about maybe 2.5 weeks per exam. So what that means is that in 2.5 weeks, you're going to have to cover a lot of ground, meaning you're going to have to go over the 3 topics. Because the way the exams are structured or formatted is that it entails actually answering questions on one topic and key terms from another topic. So there's part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is answer questions on one topic. So let me give you an example, okay? The exams are already posted on Blackboard, so you can click here, first exam. And again, so you do this on your own. This is like a writing assignment. And of course, it's open notes, of course, but I'll get into some of the pitfalls, some of the mistakes that people make in just a few seconds, again, after we explain here the format of the exam. So part 1 tells you choose one topic and answer all the questions fully. So either you choose the topic on the Native Americans or the European background. So you only choose one. Okay? So I'm just letting you know that for each exam, you do need to watch 2 topics out of the 3 to pass the exam. Okay? Because part 1 says, well, I have to just choose between topic number 1 and 2, so I'm just going to choose, let's say, number 1. So you watch the 3 videos on the Native American history, culture, and religion, and you answer all of those questions very thoroughly with details and examples, as if you're writing to an audience that does not know anything about history, has no clue what history you're talking about. Okay, so don't skip information. Don't assume I know what you're talking about. Don't leave out anything. Be very, very descriptive in your analysis. Once you're, answering those questions. That's for 70 points. You're supposed to be writing at the very least 5 full pages just for part 1 to earn those 70 points. At least 5 full pages. You can write more, of course. But for part 2, everybody has to go over the topic on religion. That the third topic, everybody, without exception, must watch those 3 videos, because the exam entails choosing 3 key terms from a set of 5, and you have to not just identify the key term. This is not just a definition. You have to not only identify it, but describe it and explain it as thoroughly as possible. I'm really looking at a long paragraph per term. You'll see, once you start watching again the lectures, there's a lot to be said, for example, about Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation. By the way, this is Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. Martin Luther was the 16th century German monk in Central Europe that initiated the Protestant Reformation. He's the first Protestant, in other words. So there's a lot to be said about that, and you'll see. So if you're just answering with just a small paragraph, you're not going to earn full points. Again, so you want to earn as many points as possible, because the highest you can get by just answering one topic in part 1 is 70 points. And that's if your answer is just excellent. Okay, so don't assume you're going to get automatic 70 points just because you answer every question. I mean, you have to answer those very, very thoroughly. So you choose 3 topics in part 2 and answer them very fully for 30 points. So everybody must do that. Now, let me tell you some of the errors or mistakes that students make when they submit the exams, and which leads to either low grade or failing grade. Well, low grade. Well, the most common problem is that a lot of students just do part one very well or somewhat well, and once they go into part two, they write very simple answers. They demonstrate that they did not review the material. They didn't watch the lectures, period. They write just a small paragraph, and they're like in a rush, and they think that, well, it's a key term, so it's just like, it's a small paragraph or whatever it is. And sometimes, again, it's not even that. They just leave that out altogether. They don't even answer anything. So if you're doing that, what you're saying is that, well, out of the 3 topics, I just watch one. So you're not going to get above 70 if, at all. Because more than likely you'll be receiving a D. You'll be somewhat in the 60s, maybe low 60s, thereabout, 62, 63. And, you want to make a 63 in an exam? Well, it's not really recommended. I don't advise it whatsoever. You want to make sure you're getting a higher grade. At the very least, you're falling to the B range, the very, very least. If not, in the A range. Why not? Okay? So in order to do that, you need to do both part 1 and part 2 very thoroughly. Again, so that's mistake number 1. Second mistake, and that is really leading to a failing grade, and that is using a computer-generated transcription of my lectures. I'm not going to watch the lecture. I'm just going to use a transcriptor, a program, a software, and they just turn in a transcription of my lectures. That's not going to work either, because if you submit a transcription of my lectures, what that leads to is a failing grade. You're saying I did not watch the lecture. That's exactly what you're actually implying by doing that. So I need to read a narrative. I need to read an explanation of historical events from yourself in your own words. Okay, I need to see that you are doing that. In other words, not a computer, not a transcriptor or a transcription, generated by some software or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to be very, very strict on that regard. Okay, very, very strict. As soon as I start reading my own lecture there, again, it's going to be disqualified. It has to be explained through you. And number 3, and this is also leading to a failing grade, is the use of outside sources. Some students decide that they want to answer the exam by just browsing other books or encyclopedias online or articles, and they write a lot of information, by the way, but there's nothing that I covered in the lectures, which also implies that you did not go through the material. So what that means, whether you're using a computer-generated transcription of my lectures or you're just using outside sources, what you're saying is that I have not taken your class. Okay? I am in your class, but I have not actually done anything in the class. I have not reviewed the material. I have not learned anything here. I'm just gathering all this information and giving it to you so I can pass. So it's not going to work. So I'm warning you right now, very early on in the semester, because I want to avoid, sending back papers to you with those comments and zeros and so on, saying, this was obviously, not a unacceptable work. It was either based on outside sources, so this is my transcription. Again, so just do the work once and do it right. Instead of doing it twice, it takes twice the time and effort. Just do it once and do it right. And just get it over with. That's my best advice. Okay. So, they all, each exam has due dates. The instructions tells you all the guidelines and the format that you should be following and so on. Again, each exam is going to be formatted identical, meaning that that's the identical format for the first, second, and final exams. There's part 1, part 2, in a similar fashion, very, very similar. All right, so besides the exams, we have also extra credit assignments. We have 3 extra credit assignments, and they're available to all, and those are not mandatory, those are optional. If you want to add up to 10 points to each exam, you do an extra credit assignment. You can do 2 or you can do 3, doesn't matter. Again, there's no rule. But this is a wonderful opportunity for you to increase your grades significantly. Again, it's a whole letter grade in each exam. So what that means is that your grades are not set in stone. Again, there's plenty of opportunity to improve. Now, a piece of technical information here is that you have until March the 4th to withdraw from this course. If you fail to do so, even though you have not submitted any work, you will be receiving whatever grade you got. Okay, so please keep that in mind, because this can affect your GPA, or it can affect your financial aid and so on in different ways. So if for some reason you decide to withdraw from this course but feel that you can submit everything before the semester ends, you just need maybe an extension because you're dealing through some medical problem, some emergency of sorts, please contact me before you make the final decision. We can work an arrangement. We can work out an arrangement, some extension, for example, and so on. I'm willing to work with you if you're going through, once again, emergencies or problems of different kinds. I'm flexible enough, again, to provide opportunities, extensions, for you to submit the work before the semester ends. Okay. But if you feel that, it is very, very difficult for you to continue, okay, I respect your decision. Okay. And you have until March the 4th. Okay. All right. Now, there is going to be one course assignment, and that is the study questions report. This is, again, where the book or the booklet, this collection of documents, comes in. Make sure you get the 4th edition, because the documents I selected, which are 10, are derived from the 4th edition. And it entails for you to read those documents. They're about 3 pages in length each, and answer the questions that are listed here in the guidelines. It tells you the chapter, the page number, it tells you the name of the document and the questions that you need to answer. Okay. Is very simplistic. Now, in terms of the format, what I expect is for you to list on the very top of the page the title of the document first. For example, Swimmer as Told to James Mooney, Origin of Disease and Medicine. And then, after you have written the title of the document on top of the page, you follow a question and answer format. Question first, then answer. Then the other question listed there, and then you answer it, and so forth. Once you move into a new document, you move into a new page, and you write the title of the new document on top of the page. Okay? And follow that same procedure, question and answer, one by one. At the end of the day, you will end up with a 10-page report. So it's 10 pages in length at the very minimum. You can go over, of course, that will be no problem. Page number, double spaced, with a cover page, and so on. To be uploaded by February the 29th. Again, that falls on a Thursday, and this is going to be 25% of your final grade. 25% of your final grade. So, this is a very, very important assignment that I highly recommend that you start working on this as soon as possible. Don't wait until the end. Let us just say, if you wanted to wait until late February to start doing this, even though it's due on the very end of the month. It's not impossible, but you don't want to submit a work that was done in a rush. You want to actually craft it well to earn all the points as possible, because it's 25% of your grade. Now, try to get this book as quickly as possible, as I said. Now, this book will be returned by March, so this class will be over by then, of course, but you want to get this book as quickly as possible within the next week or two and start working slowly on this assignment. Okay? And that is due February the 29th. Now, I mentioned, at the very beginning of this presentation that I'm not using a standard textbook, and that's true. I don't use them. I usually just assign a reader. This is called a reader, meaning primary sources or historical documents for students to actually hear the voices, the statements, the feelings, the expressions of historical actors, so they can gain a direct access to history. And the reason why I don't use a textbook is because my lectures do not come from a single source. In other words, I don't use a textbook and read it and then just come to you and say, okay, this is what the book says, and then just recite it, back to you. That would be redundant, to be just reciting what the book says, and then, it's unnecessary, and also because my lectures come from a multiplicity of sources. I use, in order to craft my lectures, once again, I use many kinds of sources which deal with, in many cases, many different regions of history, not just U.S. history. I also read about African history, Native American history, European history, and the like, or world history. But also, I read about psychology and science, technology. I read about economics and philosophy. So my lectures come from so many different kinds of sources that it's very difficult for me to locate a book that will give you access to or guidance to the kind of lectures that I provide. So I guide students to just focus on the lectures and just use the lectures again as their main source of information and teaching. Okay, this is where you're going to be learning again in this class. All right, so at the end, we got 4 major grades: first, second, final exams, 25% each; study questions report, 25% each. Added to that are the extra credit assignments you can do that can actually boost your grades significantly. And also keep in mind that at the end of the semester, when I'm calculating grades, I also factor in progress and effort, meaning that I go one by one and look at the progress or lack thereof of the grades, whether the grades were moving upward or downward or staying flat, and if the students submitted extra credit assignments. That's effort. Okay, so if you let's say we're moving upward from a C to a B to an A in the exams, and then you submitted an extra credit assignment in the end, but somehow you ended up with an 88.75. Well, for me, that's a lot of effort and progress you were making. And I'm just going to give you the final push for the A, because that effort and progress has to be rewarded. I mean, that shows that you were really trying to improve yourself, in other words. Okay. Conversely, if you were moving downward, again, and if you did not submit any extra credit assignment and you ended up with an 88.78 or 75, well, that's the grade that you're going to get. Okay, so your grades are not set in stone. There's always plenty of time to improve. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay, now the last page of the syllabus looks at week by week development, again, of the topics that we're going to be covering. And it tells you when we're going to have an exam. For example, we cover 3 topics. first, and then we have an exam on February the 2nd. Then we move into part 2, cover 3 more topics, and then have another exam on February the 20th. And then part 3 will cover the other 3 topics, and then turn in the study questions report on the 29th of February, and then have the final exam submitted by March the 8th. Okay, so it gives you also the due date for the exams and the assignment. Where you're supposed to submit those assignments and exams is under here. It says submit work. Submit work, first exam, second exam, final exam, study questions, and the extra credits. This is where you submit, again, all your work. Okay? So this is all I have for you. I hope this video presentation was helpful in identifying the major components, requirements, expectations for this course. Keep in mind, again, the tips and warnings that I provided regarding the exams, for example, the transcriptions, the outside sources, not doing part 2, and so on. Keep that in mind. And if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know, and I will respond to your emails as soon as I can within a 24-hour period, Monday through Friday. Okay? This is all I have for you, and once again, my name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I'll be your instructor for this class this semester, and I'll see you on Tuesday, January the 16th, to send you the very first class introduction video, this video that we're actually recording right now. Okay? Thank you.